Most people usually think of the holiday season as filled with joy and happiness. It's a time for togetherness and festivities with family and friends. But for many, the holidays are also filled with grief and mourning for lost loved ones, in particular, the families of children killed by gun violence. The holiday season just never gets any easier for them. It's been 12 years since the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut. And the family of 6-year-old Ana Grace Marquez Green, who was killed that day along with 25 others, continues to work through their grief and honor her legacy. Ana's mother, Nelva Marquez Green, joins us now. She's also a therapist specializing in grief, loss, and trauma. Thank you so much for being here, Nelva. Today marks 12 years specifically since you buried your daughter, Ana Grace. How have you and your family approached the holidays? And what advice would you have for others watching maybe right now that are struggling this season?
First of all, having watched the last 10 minutes, we grieve, but we're also not alone in our grief. There probably isn't too many people there aren't too many people in the country who aren't grieving right now. They aren't grieving the loss of a person, the loss of a job, the loss of what they thought was a future. Certainly that hit for us in a very public way, but there are so many people across the United States who are grieving, and grieving is a public health issue because we don't have enough grief literacy in this country. We don't have enough people who understand that what grief needs are resources and witnesses, and not just this superficial thing that it's all going to get better, because very often it doesn't.
Yeah. It doesn't get better for so many people. It's time doesn't always heal wounds, as people say. The other thing that I've been watching and following you've really documented it in clear ways. The historic flood in August this year severely impacted your family and destroyed many of your late daughter's possessions along with your family's belongings. How are you coping with that sort of loss as you push forward?
I'm glad that you brought that up, because very often what we're dealing with also is grief that is compounded by secondary and other losses, right? So for us, this is actually our 12th, 13th Christmas without Ana, but it is the first Christmas that we don't have her or her things, right? The things that were lost in that historic flooding and the flooding of the century on August 18th in Connecticut. And the same holds true for other people who might be listening. So when people say time heals all wounds, or maybe it's the 30th anniversary of when you lost your wife or your husband or that beloved special person, remember that grief time is not the same as chronological time. So it is normal and okay if you continue to grieve. What's not normal, specifically in this country, is our inability to support and hold grievers where they are. Again, grief needs systemic support. We need more bereavement time in our places of work. We need more people who understand how to support people who are critically hurting. Because I know, as public as our loss was, we are not alone in our grief. And that's compounded by commercials that show intact families. It's compounded by this consumerism, right? Everybody's getting a new car. But in fact, everybody doesn't get that. And there are many of us hurting.
Yeah. And as you talk about your hurt and also your activism, you've been open about your frustration that you became an inadvertent gun safety advocate. You wrote once in the New York Times in an op-ed, quote, "I will not be used as bait to shame legislators to do the right thing. I will not dishonor my family or demand others do so that you can sleep at night. I will not allow you to suffocate me under your version of a superhero. Ask more of our legislatures and less of those who are grieving." I wonder, as you take in those words, and those are such powerful words, how concerned you are that this year, as it goes by, is that more Americans are just kind of complacent in getting real change, especially when you think about the power dynamics next year shifting in Washington.
I want people who are listening to this out of my voice, especially those who worked so hard for something different that we did not get in November, to understand that the biggest and best activism is that you stay alive, that you stay alive, that you stay healthy, that you stay in alignment with what you know to give you light, because this journey will be long. And that's what I wrote about in that piece in the New York Times, because that was a direct response to this call to show images of our daughter as she lay dying, right, as in some effort to move legislators. Quite frankly, we ask more of hurting people than we do our legislators because we understand that it's easier, but it's not what we should do. So I am asking for a bit of justice here. I am asking for activists to take care of themselves, to know that what's coming is long, but we need to take care of ourselves first. But also, yes, if you are grieving, it's okay to take care of yourself. It's important that you rest. It's important that you take care of your physical and mental health. All of those things matter just as much as your activism. As a matter of fact, it is your activism.
Yeah. And you also, your daughter was just such a beautiful little girl. What would you want people to know about her?
I would want for anyone listening to me to understand that Anna was a well-loved child. And so are all of our people lost to gun violence. And this thing, we keep kicking the can down the road and saying, oh, okay, we'll get to it later. It means that every day between 100 and 120 families are impacted by the loss of a loved one. And it could be Christmas time. It could be 4th of July. It matters, and this should end.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for your powerful words and your powerful activism and for making grief something that you were so open about. Thank you so much.